FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys with a burning question for you. Y'all have fun doing your taxes last week? Oh, mercy. This time of year, I love the spring weather. I would love it if April 15th, or in this case, April 17th, was just another lovely spring day that you didn't have to worry about filing all these forms with the government and telling them all your personal financial details. And it'd just be a whole lot nicer if all that would go away, don't you think?
Yeah, and not only the paperwork and all the record keeping, but the risk of identity theft that we talked about in the last podcast. That's a huge risk, a very real risk. And all of this nonsense with the income tax is unnecessary if we go to the FAIRtax. I mean, that's it. You get rid of all these problems by going to the FAIRtax.
That we do. I tell you what, let's give you our email address here real quick, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. The FAIRtax Guys, all one word, at gmail.com. Our Facebook page is still there. Hope you like it. Hope you can leave us a comment or a question or what have you. Be happy to get back to you. And if it's a really good one, we'll use it here on FAIRtax Power Radio.
Yeah. And while we're at it, mentioning a couple of things, because we've been a little delinquent on this in the past couple of podcasts. Keep in mind that, we've talked about Facebook. The FAIRtax Guys have their own Facebook page, but there is a social media site that's just for FAIRtax proponents. Just for FAIRtax proponents. It kind of looks like Facebook, and it's called member.fairtax.org. Member.fairtax.org. Go on there, become a member. Yes, it will cost you $5 for the year. All right. But then you can interact with other people, form links and so forth, and ask questions and put in information. Like if your group is having some kind of a meeting or something, let people know what happened. If you're setting up an information booth at a local strawberry festival or something like that, let people know about it. Or if you have an interesting graphic or some information about tax fraud and so forth, member.fairtax.org is where you can share it with other people across the entire country. All right, and get the word out about the FAIRtax, and we all become stronger for it.
All right. Ron, I was just thinking, we spend a lot of time here on FAIRtax Power Radio, like we did in the last episode, just bashing the IRS and bashing the income tax system because it really deserves it.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
It is, but I tell you what, there's this kind of something going on here. The midterms are coming. And there are already, I'm seeing here in Florida, there are negative campaign ads. Yeah. There's a congressman down here named Ron DeSantis, and there's an ad running against him right now. Mm-hmm. He beats his wife, he sets puppies on fire, he cannibalizes small children. I am exaggerating a little bit.
Come on, Bob, this is a family show.
I am exaggerating a little bit, okay. But that's the kind of personal vitriol that we see in campaign ads, and it turns my stomach. I'm sure it turns a lot of other people's stomach. And it got me to think, if we're going to be here on FAIRtax Power Radio, we've got to do more than just run a negative campaign against the income tax and against the IRS. We've got to tell people, give them a good reason to vote for the FAIRtax.
Yep.
If you can't give me a good reason to vote for, if all you can tell me is that my opponent is a dishonest louse, therefore vote for me, that's kind of a weak argument. So I want to get back into it, and let's hit this episode really hard, and there's a whole long list of things we can get to. Might even have to spill this over into another one another day. But let's talk about what's good about the FAIRtax today, not what's bad about the IRS.
That's a good idea.
Shall we do that?
Let's be positive for a change.
At the top of the list, the FAIRtax is simple, it is fair, and it is progressive. It is simple. How much simpler does it get? The FAIRtax is included in the price of everything you buy at the retail level as long as you're buying new goods and services. No FAIRtax on used goods. But if all you need to do, make a retail purchase of a new product or a service, lawn service or get a haircut or something like that, And you pay the fair tax. It's included in the price. It's anonymous. Nobody has to know who you are. The vendor just knows how much was collected on each transaction. That's remitted back to the states. The states remit that up to the federal government. You could not design a simpler system than the fair tax.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. And I think the founding fathers understood that. Of course, back then, 200-something years ago, they didn't have computers. I mean, doing a sales tax nationwide just wasn't feasible. It is now. It's very doable, and it's very simple, with the computer age. So, yep. Now, fair and progressive.
Oh yeah.
It is a 23% sales tax on all new products and services. Okay,
that's 23% inclusive. That means it's included in the price. If the price tag of an item you buy says $100, 23 of it is fair tax.
Yep, it is included.
Now, some people look at that and say that's a $77 item that you put $23 of tax on. That's a 30% rate. We're not going to get into that argument, but the income tax is kind of inclusive. If you got a 25% rate, you made $100,000, you pay $25,000.
Yeah, and we're used to it. And Bob has used this example before. When you buy gas at the gas station, that has the taxes inclusive. You don't see them. Now, the difference with the fair tax is you will see it on the receipt. It will be printed. $77 for coffee maker, $23 for fair tax.
Yeah, price $100. So don't think that the fair tax, a 23% tax, is going to turn a $100 item on the shelf into a $123 item at the cash register. We've run into that fear before.
Yep.
It is inclusive. So it's simple, being that you pay it when you buy things, and that's it. No returns, no receipts, no nothing to worry about. Don't have to do that. It's fair because it treats everybody the same way. Everybody pays the tax, and it's progressive. That is where the prebate comes in.
Very important.
Very important, because everybody says, well, it's fair. If we take 23% from everybody, that's fair. Well, not really. If you take 23% from somebody that makes, $50 billion a year, they can live on what's left, no problem at all. You take 23% away from somebody who's barely making it on minimum wage, and you have hit them really, really hard. So a progressive tax system is one that's kind of based on your ability to pay. If you don't have a whole lot of money, then the tax system doesn't require a whole lot of you. If you do have a whole lot of money, then the tax system expects you to pay your fair share. We hear that a lot. And with the fair tax, it is impossible not to pay your fair share, because the prebate is a rebate back on that you will get a tax refund, money that is collected from you that you don't owe, because you do not owe any fair tax at all until your spending reaches the poverty level, and the government figures out what the poverty level by household size is. Now, if you spend right at the poverty level, right, you are basically providing your family's basic necessities, and that's about it. And so philosophically, we don't want to tax that spending. But at the same time, we can't keep track of how much everybody spends, so we just collect it from everybody from $1, but we know how much that amount is, and we know how much tax you'll pay on that level of spending. So that's the prebate. That's what you get back every month, the tax refund, money collected from you that you don't owe. So it's not like a handout. It's not like some kind of entitlement that's coming out of somebody else's pocket. You are getting back your own money that you paid that you don't owe. And we like to use this a lot. A family of four, 2 adults, 2 kids, your prebate would be $631 a month.
Yep.
Now, I don't know anybody who would not like $631 a month, but the point is, the more you spend above the poverty, you don't take anything out of your pocket to pay the fair tax until your spending reaches the poverty level. But beyond that, the more you spend, the more you take out of your own pocket. Warren Buffett will pay a lot more fair tax than his secretary will, because he spends more money than she does.
Absolutely.
And it's mathematically impossible not to pay your fair, because we've talked about evasion a lot. You can't evade the fair tax. It's included in the price of the things you buy. And the more stuff you buy, the more fair tax you're going to pay. And the more stuff you buy, the less, your total tax bill is covered by the prebate. So the more you spend, the more you take out of your pocket.
Yep.
That is as fair and as simple and as progressive as it gets.
Yeah, so don't fall for sometimes when people first hear about the fair tax, well, what's that? Well, it's a sales tax. And their knee-jerk reaction, without studying the fair tax at all, say, oh, it's a sales tax. That's regressive. It hurts the poor. Okay? No, the prebate takes care of that, just as Bob explained. And these figures, what it takes for a family of 4, we didn't make that up. That's not from the Americans for Fair Taxation. That's from Health and Human Services of the federal government. They put out these figures every year and sometime in January. And we just take them and use them to figure out. So like Bob's example, mom and dad and 2 kids. According to Health and Human Services, it requires, in the 48 states, $32,920 to maintain. That's what's required to put food on the table, clothes on their back, and a roof over their head.
So if you spend that much, you know how much 23% of that amount is, and that would be?
Yeah, that would be $7,572 over the course of a year.
So you divide that by 12, and you get back per month $631 that family for. Now, if you're just a single person, one person, yourself, no dependents, no nothing else, your prebate's still $233.
Yep.
Now, if you're like a friend of mine I know who's got 4 kids, 2 adults and 4 kids, they'd get back almost $797 a month in prebate for a family of that size. And again, it doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter where you make it. That is based on household size alone. And everybody, again, that's another part of the fair thing. Everyone's treated the same. Everybody, whether you make as much money as Donald Trump or if you're on welfare, everybody gets the same prebate based on their household size. It's fair.
Yep. And it is only based on the size of the household. It has nothing to do with your income, as Bob was saying. So just think of a family that's of 4 that's just getting by. They're just earning enough for the basic necessities. Yes, they go out and buy stuff. They will pay the fair tax. And at the beginning of every month, they get the prebate, which reimburses them in advance for the taxes they'll be paying on the basic necessities. And so every month they get $631. Don't you think a family that's just getting by could use that $631?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's simple. You don't have to save receipts. You don't have to keep records. You don't have to file tax returns. You don't have to do anything. You just pay it when you buy things.
Yep.
End of discussion. And really, you can. And the beauty of that system as well is that you can determine what your own tax liability is by your spending habits. I mean, if the IRS is going to come in and tax your income, then your income is kind of, a lot of people, their income is just a fixed level that their employer says they'll give you.
Yeah.
And so, the IRS says that's it. But if you don't want to pay more fair tax, you buy used goods.
Yeah, there you go.
So you can determine by your spending habits how much fair tax you pay.
So the fair tax, better than any other tax scam out there.
Wait a minute,
I shouldn't
tax
say scam.
I'm going to call you on that.
the other programs are scams.
A lot of them are, yeah.
The other proposals, especially
the income tax is a criminal enterprise in some cases.
But the fair tax is the only tax proposal that completely untaxes the poor up to the poverty level. It does it 100% perfectly without Congress meddling. I mean, look at what we have now. We have all these different tax brackets, and then you have all these different deductions and exemptions and so forth. Congress tries to make the current tax code progressive by putting a higher tax rate on higher income individuals. But then they go ahead and put in all these deductions and exemptions so they can escape their they can reduce their burden.
Could be, yeah. But I tell you, when you talk about untaxing the poor, a lot of people will say, well, the working poor don't pay any income tax anyway. They don't make enough to do it. But they do have to pay the payroll taxes.
That's right. Yeah.
Those are the most regressive taxes on the book because those goes from $1. There are no exemptions. There are no deductions from that one. From $1 that you earn, you are taxed the payroll tax for Social Security and Medicare. And really, that's a whole other thing that we can get into. The fair tax puts Social Security and Medicare on a much firmer financial footing because right now, the only people supporting Social Security and Medicare are the ones that are paying this payroll tax, i.e. the ones that are working for a paycheck. If you trade commodities, if you're living off investment income, if there are lots of different ways that you can make money without working for a paycheck. So there are lots of ways that folks can make money and lots of it in some cases without paying a dime towards Social Security and Medicare. But those guys buy things. Those guys and those gals too, I guess. Is that, can we say that these days anyway?
Those people.
Those people. Okay, let's use a nice gender neutral term there. But people who buy things become taxpayers under the fair tax, regardless of how they make their money or how much they make. Yeah, much better.
Yeah, it is a far superior system, and the big conceptual difference is that it taxes you on what you consume, what you choose to consume, instead of what you earn. The Founding Fathers abhorred the idea of taxing you on what you earn, all right? You were supposed to be able to work and work as hard as you want or work as little as you want, depending on your own work ethic and so forth, and not have to worry about the tax man. And it's all upside down because of this income tax. So,
I'll tell you, another thing that FAIRtax does, I really love this. Remember, it is a retail consumption tax. You pay it when you make a retail purchase. You do not get taxed on money you invest. You do not get taxed on money you save. You do not get taxed on money you squirrel away for your retirement. You do not get taxed on money that you give your kids. You do not get taxed on money that you give your church or anything else like that. The only time you get taxed is when you make a retail purchase. All these other things, savings, investment, things that really help the economy, not taxed. And what happens? When you tax something, you get less of it.
Yeah.
When you don't tax it, you get more of it. So if you don't tax investments, you don't tax savings, you don't tax retirement stuff, you get more of it, and that's good for the economy.
Yeah, savings is good. I mean, you don't want, people need to have some a little backup there, for in case of emergency. And the FAIRtax will encourage savings and investment. It's just that simple, because you're not going to be taxed on the interest and dividends. It's just that simple. Ready for the next one here?
Yep, go for it.
Oh, no personal record keeping or tax filing.
Yeah, we touched on that under simple.
Yeah.
No tax returns to fill out ever, online or on paper.
Think about that.
No, yeah, and but a lot of people are thinking about that with the tax return deadline just a few days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
How many people are still got a headache or a hangover from all the stuff they had to do?
Especially if you waited to the last minute.
They'll
like so
stay
many
up with
people
hours
do.
on end with pencil and or on a computer online somewhere, but you still have to spend hours and hours and hours doing that. And when businesses do that, that's called compliance cost. That's passed along to the consumer, by the way.
Yeah.
But no more record keeping, no more income tax returns, no more, none of that stuff. Again, you just pay the FAIRtax at the cash register when you buy things, and you're done with it.
And if you're a small business owner, just think of the reduction in the paperwork because of no income tax. Your paperwork is going to be reduced probably 80-90%. It's going to be so much easier for you to concentrate on your business instead of all this record keeping and keeping up with the laws and the changes in the tax code, or having to pay somebody else to do that. You can actually spend more time thinking about your business and making your business better for your customer and better for your employees and better for you. So it's a great benefit.
You talk about the tax code and having to keep up with it. There have been over 1,200, almost 1,300 proposed changes to the tax code in this Congress alone.
Yeah.
And, of course, again, we say this, not all of them are going to become law, but a lot of them do. And just about every change to the tax code is just about a loophole for somebody that a lobbyist has put in there for somebody's benefit that's paying him a lot of money. Then it gets passed on to the Congress. It's a corrupt system, where people buy favorable tax treatment for their clients. These K Street lobbyists literally make millions of dollars a year doing that, putting loophole after loophole after loophole after loophole after loophole in the tax system. And if you've got a loophole in there that benefits you, then it is, your fiduciary duty to take advantage of it. But the FAIRtax has no loopholes.
There you
Again,
go.
back to the fair part.
Yep.
People don't get you don't get a tax break that I don't get.
Exactly.
Unless you decide to buy something used and I buy something new.
Yeah.
And that's personal
And that's your
decision.
choice.
That's our individual choices. There are no loopholes that people can take advantage of. There are no tax havens. You can't send your money offshore to avoid the FAIRtax, because you've still got to buy things, and the tax is there when you buy things.
Yep. And, by the way, about the prebate, it goes to legitimate citizens and residents of the country.
Yeah,
Okay.
legal residents.
Legal residents. Yep.
And again, it will be administered by the Social Security Administration. So you register your household with the Social Security Administration, basically tell them, these are the people in my household, these are their Social Security numbers. It will be double checked to make sure that the same number is not used multiple times.
Use E-Verify.
Yeah, so check that out. So
that means...
So again, there are some people that say the FAIRtax would help fight illegal immigration. It would not give them the prebate.
Yep, quite the opposite. Everybody will pay the FAIRtax, and all legal residents and citizens will get the prebate. If you're here illegally, sorry, no prebate, but you will pay the fair tax when you go to the store.
So no gift or estate taxes. We mentioned if you give your children a gift, if you pass on, that's probably the most insidious tax there is, the estate tax.
Yeah.
More properly called the death tax.
All that stuff was taxed to begin with, and then after you
it's not bad enough you get taxed to death while you're living, and then when you pass on, the government's there with its hand out again.
And how many family farms have been lost to the family, been in the family a couple generations, and then when the current owners pass on, try to pass it to the next generation, but the IRS is there with their hand out because of the estate tax, they can't afford it.
Yeah, some people argue, though, the estate tax is the most progressive tax we've got because it only hits rich people. It only kicks in on estates that are above, several $1 million. So, yeah, most people, when they pass on, will not be subject to the estate tax. But if one person is subject to the estate tax, that's not fair. You're treating different people differently. And dying should not be a taxable event. I'm just sorry. It shouldn't be. And the fair tax gets rid of that, gets rid of the estate tax. Again, once you're died, you can no longer make retail purchases and you will no longer pay the fair tax.
Yep. So, all right. What's next here?
No tax on education or job training. That's a biggie.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the way it is now. All right. Education is a deductible expense, and we want people to improve their education and through job training or going to college or whatever. So those expenses will not be subject to the fair tax. You'll be able to go to college, pay your tuition and so forth, and not have to worry about the fair tax, because we want you to increase your education, because generally a better education means a better job. A better job generally means a better salary, and that means more spending. So it's an investment in the future for the federal government.
We got to scoot on here. Protect Social Security and Medicare. We touched on that. Because right now, only the people who are working for paychecks support Social Security and Medicare through the payroll tax. That goes away. Now, the fair tax does specifically earmark a certain percentage of the revenue that the fair tax will raise to go towards Social Security and Medicare. It makes Social Security and Medicare supporters out of everybody who buys things, not just people who work for a paycheck. And this is another one too. No federal withholding from your paycheck.
Oh boy.
That is a biggie. If you're just barely making it by and you see that the federal government is withholding money from you, even if you file a tax return and get it back later, the fact that they are taking that from you on a weekly or biweekly or however often you get paid, that the federal government, and this is what just really galls my gizzard no end by doing that, the federal government is saying to everybody who works, I am your highest spending priority. You will pay me before you will support your family. That the government takes his cut before you spend a dime on your family. You have to pay Uncle Sam. That is wrong. The fair tax fixes that, again, by getting rid of the income tax. And when the income tax goes away, the withholding that supports it goes away. You bring home the full gross amount of your pay. Who would not like to bring home the full gross amount of their paycheck versus the net amount?
Yeah, and it's not just people that are getting paychecks. Think about retired people that are just getting by. I mean, there are
like us.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the just getting by, but we are retired.
No, yeah, I'm not complaining, but they are. Everybody who's retired, or as Bob mentioned, the lady who's living on Social Security alone. Well, they're pulling, withholding out of the Social Security.
Yes, they are. Most people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's right.
That you have federal income tax withheld from your Social Security payment.
Yep. So all that goes away. So retired people are going to benefit here because they're going to get their entire retirement distribution and all of their Social Security. It's going to be a big help to them. Plus, if they had like a 401k, a tax sheltered annuity or something, when the fair tax goes into effect, they don't have to worry about that savings being taxed, at your current tax rate, because there is no income tax. They can save for the future and not worry about paying taxes on the interest and dividends, which we mentioned before.
All right, we got to move on here for the sake of time, but I love this one. The IRS has been aptly described as a criminal enterprise. And the way it does, the way it ignores the Bill of Rights, the way it runs roughshod over people in some cases like that. But the fair tax, the consumption tax you pay at the cash register, is the only tax reform proposal that gets rid of the IRS, does not turn it into a warm and little fuzzy creature like some people are saying they want to do. They don't need to modernize it. You don't need to make it friendlier. You need to get rid of it. And the only way to get rid of the IRS is to get rid of the income tax that it's charged with administering and enforcing. And the fair tax is the only tax plan that does that.
Yeah,
Gets
but Bob,
rid of the IRS. I love it.
If you don't have the IRS, how's all this money going to get to the U.S. Treasury?
It is going to be collected by the states. Remember, again, this is a consumption tax. The vendors, the stores where you buy things, that already 45 states have their own sales tax. So every point of sale software package in the country is set up to handle a sales tax. So the fair tax will be collected by the vendors, remitted back to the state agencies, and they're the ones that are going to enforce it. So now instead of one enforcement agency, you got 50 enforcement agencies keeping tabs on much fewer. 180 million individuals file income tax returns. There are nowhere near 180 million different retailers out there that are going to be checked on by the fair tax. Yeah. So the states are going to collect it. The vendor is actually going to get to keep a little bit for his trouble. The state is going to keep a little bit as well, very small percentage. But then the states will collect it and remit it. So the only thing you need at the federal level is a small office within the Department of the Treasury to simply receive the money from the states. No enforcement at the federal level necessary. No administration at the federal level necessary. The states do it all.
And the federal office that's collecting this money doesn't have to worry about audits because, as Bob said, that's taken care of by the states. All right? There's 45 of the 50 states that currently have a sales tax, a state sales tax. They know how to look for sales tax fraud, and it's perpetrated by the vendors, not by the consumers. All right? As a consumer, you don't have much choice. You go into a big box store, you buy something, you're paying the sales tax. You're not getting out of there, all right, without paying the sales tax. If some little mom and pop shop is playing fast and loose with the sales tax, the taxing agency is going to come down on them, not the consumer. So it's all there already. And for the 5 states that don't have a sales tax, well, they have several choices. They can either implement, the system to put it in place. They can have an adjoining state or an adjacent state do it for them, or they can ask the feds to come in and do it for them. All right, so it's all been thought out, and it's so simple.
All right, another thing I want to hit on before we run out of time here is the fair tax protects privacy. If you listened to our last episode, you heard about all the identity theft that the current income tax system allows and is subject to. The fair tax protects your privacy because it does not collect any private information. That is foolproof. You cannot steal something that's not collected from you. Hackers can't get at something that's not in somebody else's computer. And none of your personal information will be in somebody else's computer with a fair tax. You just pay it at the cash register. End of story.
Like we started out with, simple, fair, and progressive. That's the fair tax.
All right. We got time for maybe one or two more points. I love this last one. Encourages economic growth and prosperity.
There you go.
The fair tax will be rocket fuel for the economy. Mm-hmm. You get rid of all the compliance costs, the money that businesses have to spend on tax attorneys and accountants and stuff like that, and just the man hours that it takes to do all the paperwork, or even on the computers as well. All those compliance costs, they all but go away. There'll be very little bit left because you still got to deal with the state agency. But that is a huge component in the price of everything we buy already that goes away with the fair tax, and then the fair tax just kind of replaces it. So prices may rise a little bit, but they're not going to rise anywhere near the 23% that some people will tell you it will, but it will encourage economic growth. I mean, you talk about companies, international corporations wanting to come here because there's no income tax to deal with. I'll take that any day of the week.
Yep, you got that right. It will be rocket fuel for the economy and the research. Remember, the fair tax has over $20 million worth of research, and some of it goes to show the economic benefits of it.
Okay.
So
this was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy every now and then. Of course, I love to bash the IRS, but it's always nice to get in here and just explain what is good about the fair tax, why people should support it, even if the income tax was working and it's not, even if the income tax, was not fraud prone, not error prone, all that other stuff, it would still be easier to do it with a fair tax. Again, our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook as well. And that's just going to have to wrap it up for this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the Fair Tax Guys, reminding you, as we always do, that the fair tax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming.